Okay, it's time for task number 2. So I'm here in my Looping It Up session. Make sure you've got the session open that you created from the template. So once we're in here, we're going to come look in the Browse section again. Remember, we can open that down here. And then we're going to come over to Loops, and we're going to use Lydian Loops V1 to build some loops, build some beats out of these loops. So when we open this up, again, we have drums and instruments. So basically, this is what comprises a beat or a song, is a percussive element like drums, and then harmonic and melodic elements like instruments. So I'm going to start by building mine from the drums, and let's just grab an acoustic loop. Now I want to say a couple things here. All the loops we have here have the tempo notated right here, 120. And when they're a instrument loop, they also have the key notated. Now, if you're not a musician and you haven't studied music before, you might not know what a key is, but a key is just a certain group of notes that work well together. And if you take instruments that are, or loops that are written in different keys, try to put them together, it may not sound good. So what I've done for Lydian Loops V1 is made them all the same tempo and all the same key. So here on the electric bass, we see electric bass 120, that's the tempo. We see it down here, 120. E minor, that's the key. E minor is also the same as G major for those of you who know music. And then there's actually 4 loops of that kind. Then there's a synth bass at 120 in E minor, and there's 6 loops of that kind, and so on. So when you're creating your loops, creating your beats from loops, you need to make sure that you're at the same tempo and the same key. Now, Studio One will match the tempo automatically. If you remember this little metronome symbol down here, play at song tempo, so that's fine. But the key it won't do automatically, so you need to make sure you're in the same key. Luckily, everything in the Lydian Loops folder is in the same key, so it's good to go. I'm going to grab a loop here. I like that one, so I'm going to drag that in. I recommend for this task, you keep your tempo at 120 just to make things easy and just focus on creating the loops. I'm going to set up a loop around this. Remember, I can come to the top and get the little pencil icon and draw in, I'll start from over here, and draw in my loop like this. And then if I push the slash key, I highlight it, now I've got this. And it loops perfectly when it gets to the end. So I'll set my cursor back here, and I'll start adding some other loops into it. So let's get into the instruments, and my recommendation for you at this stage is to work like this. Use only one bass loop per beat, per little section you're creating. Bass has a tendency to interfere with itself when you use more than one at a time. So I would just stick with one of those. The guitar, the piano, the synths, and the things you find in various, you can use a number of these. Just use your own ear and your own discernment to tell you what sounds good or not. If you use too many loops that are similar or in the same range or too busy, it will get confusing and the beat won't sound that nice. So be careful about how many you add and exactly what you add. You can try things out, delete them, and however you like to do it. So I'm going to add in a piano loop. Let's find something here. Yeah, I think I like that one. So let's drag that in. So now we've got sounds pretty cool. Now, if I want to audition new loops while this is playing, I can do that. So check this out. I'm going to push play, and then I'm going to double click one of these loops, and it will play along with it. That's pretty cool. I'll drag this guy in here. Now, as you can see, this loop is not as long as these ones, so that means I need to duplicate this loop so that it fills the whole bar, fills the whole section. So to do that, I'm going to push D, and there we go. Now, I don't have to use that. I could just have this on half of it if I wanted to, but for now, I'll keep it like this. And then I might add a bass over top of this. Let's play it again. That actually sounds pretty good. So now there's a lot going on right now. It's kind of loud, kind of in my face. So what I'm going to do is actually start balancing the volume. So to do that, I'm going to use these little sliders here, and I'll turn them all down at first. Like this, and like this. And then I'm going to bring the drums up to a volume that I like. Say like that. Now I'll bring the piano up to match what feels good. That's pretty good. Let's bring the guitar up. And now let's bring the bass up. Okay, so that's kind of how we go about building a little section, a little beat out of these loops. Stack the loops and then balance the volume using these sliders over here. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is if you want to use some of the loops that are built in with Studio One, you can. But remember this, it needs to be in the same key. If it's not a drum loop, it needs to be in the same key, and the key is E minor. Now, if that's confusing to you, I would stick with just the Lydian Loops Volume 1. If you know something about music, feel free to check out what's in here and see what you can add. So for instance, I could go into bells, hip hop, and then let's see, these are in D minor, so that's not going to work. These can be pitch shifted, but we're not going to talk about that right now. E flat minor. This one says E minor. Let's take a listen. That's pretty cool. So I could drag this in and then maybe copy it to be over here. Volume balance it. So you can see you can use the loops from the factory as well, and I recommend you do if you have the ability to. If it's all confusing to you, it's totally fine to just stick with the Lydian loops, and that would be my recommendation. So the last thing about this task is we want to build at least 3 of these. Now you can have many more loops involved than I did. You could have 10 in one section if you want. Once your section is done though, come up to the top, push Command or Control on a PC, and move this whole loop over and start building a new one over here. So I'm going to set my cursor to be right there, and then I can come down and start grabbing some new loops, maybe an electronic one. And I'm going to put this on a new track. So I don't want to put these on the old tracks that I have here because I already set their volume to how I like it. So I want it on a new track, and I'll pull that right here. And then I would come in and get some new percussion, some new instruments, and start building up a new loop section over here. Once I've got that built, I want to go over and do a third one. The task is going to call for you to do at least 3 full loop sections built out of Lydian loops, and if you want these other loops, you can do more than 3. The idea is to practice building up loops and then using the volume slider to balance the volume of your tracks. So that's the task for now, and have fun with that. I can't wait to hear what you do. See you later.